talk about the campaign, Norm. It hasn't quite begun yet. That's not for another day or so. But in some respects, it already has. I mean, you've already had your first campaign event. I think that was a debate in Invermere, wasn't it?
Yeah. So in many ways, the campaign is, as most people would know, has been going on. It feels like for a couple of years, but the local campaign really started last week. I was going door to door in Kimberley Monday, Tuesday, Canal Flats part of Wednesday, and then Wednesday night we had the first all candidates debate in Invermere. So there was the Liberal candidate, the Conservative candidate, and myself, and so about 80 people there. So the campaign has started this week. We're opening the campaign office here in Revelstoke, and that'll be a big event. And then I'm off to Prince George to join Adrian Dix for for laying out our platform for forestry, and then I'm back into Golden Tuesday, Invermere Wednesday, and Kimberley Thursday for office openings there and more door knocking. So it's begun in earnest. It's a typical NDP campaign in that it will be largely volunteer driven, and we always have more volunteers, and the opposition always has more money. So that's typically how it works. Of course, I'm very much looking forward to it. I enjoy the debates at the all candidates meetings, and I actually very much enjoy going door to door. I have really never had a bad experience going door to door. I've never found that people are impolite or disrespectful. They may have different views, but it's been consistently a good experience for me. So
when are you going to be going door to door here in Revelstoke?
I was supposed to go on Monday. I was staying over for Monday, but I was asked to come up for the laying out the platform piece on forestry. So we'll just be back here. I would think at the end of next week to start doing the door to door here. We were trying to, in the first week, get into each community. So it's, like I say, it's pushed back a little, but we've got the debates here on the 22nd, and so we'll be in door to door before that. We get to that.
Do you have a sense now of what's important to voters?
Yeah, I think it's really clear that people want a government that's competent and trustworthy, and I think that most British Columbians have made up their mind that the BC Liberals have been, certainly since 2009, untrustworthy and simply haven't provided competent government over the past 4 years. I think most people have reached that conclusion. So in 2005, 2009, I think it's fair to say that most people understood here in Revelstoke that they were electing an opposition MLA. I think this time it's different. In 2005, 2009, I was very careful to lay out exactly how I would approach the role as representing the community. And I think what's different this time is that if the NDP forms government, again, I have to be really clear with people exactly what that means. And for the past 2 years, as a member of the NDP caucus, we've been working on the platform. We have the final platform put together. We did that as recently as just last week, looking at the final numbers. It's a good practical first step in terms of turning the province around and dealing with some of the areas that people in Revelstoke tell me are important. So the way we've laid it out is we've tried to provide people with the fiscal state the province is in, to lay that out as accurately as possible. I think people know that how the process works is the government will introduce a budget, and then the actual validation of their numbers comes when public accounts are presented, and that's presented in June, July. Now the problem with that NMA election is there's often a big difference between what the government says is going to happen before an election and what the reality is. And people will remember 2009, Premier Campbell guaranteed a deficit of 495 million, but when we got public accounts it was 1.8 billion, so a significant discrepancy. There will be a lot of talking about what the actual deficit is. What I can tell people is, after 8 years of doing this job and looking at numbers and looking at budgets, that we are between, I would say, 700 million and 1 billion in deficit. That's where we are. And I think that all of the promises that politicians make in the election period has to be framed around that reality. That is where we are if we were to do exactly what the Liberals said they would do in their budget. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of those is that included in the BC Liberal budget and their claim of having a balanced budget is the selling off of assets. Now, most of those assets the BC Liberals have not described, and what the Auditor General and others have said is that it's extremely poor practice for you to put in place as a revenue that you're not guaranteed to get, right? Mm-hmm. So they say that to use asset sales, one has to sell the asset and then you could put it into your books. And the reason that's important is because last year the BC Liberals took one property, Little Mountain, in Vancouver, and gave themselves revenue of 300 million. Well, they didn't sell it. So again, this year, they're again putting in revenue of 300 million for that property. So until you've sold it, it shouldn't be in the books. The second thing is they're using deferral accounts with BC Hydro, which the Auditor General, who the Liberals are getting rid of, he described that as bookkeeping that's simply not trustworthy. So what's happening with BC Hydro is borrowing. They are then putting that borrowed money into deferral accounts, which shows up as profit that's not a real profit, and then is taken as a dividend by the province, who of course owns BC Hydro. So it's fancy bookkeeping that shows up in the BC Liberal budget as hundreds of millions of revenue, but it's not real. And then the final piece is that the BC Liberals are anticipating an increase in healthcare funding at 0.5%, and while that is significant money, on average healthcare costs have grown by 3.5%. Like at a time where they're trying to hold down costs, it has grown by 3.5%. The BC Liberals have not described the cuts that would come if they only increase healthcare spending by 0.5%. So it just seems a completely unrealistic number. I mean, they have agreed to cost pressures in the healthcare system through contracts and other things that aren't represented in the budget. So how is that all going to work? So what we've said is, realistically, what we face is between, I think the figure we used was 780 million. My sense is that even that's somewhat optimistic. So there's your starting point. So the next thing that we need to do is talk about the things that we would do differently, and that means that we need to find some space for additional spending, because we know with children, with seniors, there are some real needs that we have to address. So what happened this week is we laid out the fiscal plan, and this is additional money that we would bring in and spend on the first steps of improving areas that we know need to be improved. So what we have said is where the BC Liberals would move the corporate tax from 10% to 11%. We have said for over a year and a half now that we would move it from 10% to 12%. So there'll be a 1% difference there on corporate tax. It still keeps the corporate tax as one of the lowest in Canada, and it of course doesn't impact a small business and others. We would also reinstate a tax that was removed in, I think it was 2000 and I think it would have been 2008, 2009 in that period, which was the, no, it could have been 2010, which was the capital tax on financial institutions. So that was removed. At the time, the government said it was to create more jobs in the banking sector. Now, there would be a whole bunch of factors, but coincidental to the removal of that tax, we've lost over 1,200 jobs in that sector. So it certainly hasn't accomplished what the BC Liberals said it would, and we're going to reimpose that tax. That money will go towards supporting students in funding their post-secondary education. So that's already been committed to. As well, for any money that an individual earns over $150,000, we are going to move the tax rate from 16.5% up to 19%. Those are the areas where we would generate most of the funds that we have available to us. The carbon tax has been broadened to include emissions from oil and gas. It doesn't bring in a lot of money, but we've heard repeatedly that would be a fair way to do things. There's also another funding commitment the BC Liberals made using money that was set aside for a program that Gordon Campbell talked about, which is they set aside money that was going to be given to all British Columbians when they turned 18. Right. So that money was set aside. The Liberals in this budget took it and talked about setting up a program. We're going to use that money for a different program that will deal with childcare, and that will be announced. The more detail will come with that. So those are where we will get money, in the areas that we will spend. That will be laid out over the first week of the campaign. And in general terms, the priorities that the people have told us are important, and that these are priorities that align with what people say here. We need to do more on the land. So there will be investments promised in forestry, but more broadly it'll be on the land base. Good long-term investments that are really needed after 12 years of BC Liberal neglect. You know, you've got to look after the land. It's our most valuable asset, and for a community like Revelstoke, we need a say in decisions that are made on the land that surrounds all of our communities, and we need to make sure that there's good stewardship, and that forestry is kept strong and sustainable. These are all really important things to people here, and so there'll be an announcement that will be made, as I say, on Monday, and I'll be part of that announcement with Adrian Dix. We also will make announcements on supports for seniors, supports for our public education system, and of course skills training, and there will be also to deal with poverty. Now, all of these investments they're significant, and they're good first steps, but they're only first steps. They all fit within the fiscal constraints that we have that are real. I mean, we have the fiscal ability to, like I say, move in the right direction, but each of the steps are going to be based upon our ability to pay, and they're going to be prudent, laid out, and so this certainly doesn't. It's not a platform that will solve all of our problems all at once. That's simply not feasible. my experience is that as a mayor and as a councillor and in this job is people always have reasonable expectations, and all they want is for you to lay out honestly what you're able to do, and so it will be there, it will be laid out, and I think on top of that we can offer government that is trustworthy and that is consistently competent, and I know for Revelstoke, it's a government that has to align with the values that you see here in the community.
Mm-hmm.
When money's tight, you make sure that the businesses and the industries that generate the wealth are allowed to create that wealth. But if we have limited funds available to us, which we do, then it has to go to those in our communities that need it. You have to look after the children, you have to look after your seniors, you have to look after those who fall into poverty or who are sick, and those are Revelstoke values, and there has to be a provincial government that reflects that. And so I certainly had my say on this. It was 2 years of work. We have the numbers aligned. I know that what's going to be laid out are things that we can do. The idea is to overperform on the promises, and that's something I'm much happier doing. So and I'm confident people will look at it and say, hey, that sounds reasonable. Doesn't solve every one of my problems, but it's a reasonable direction to go, and a change in direction. So I'm happy with that.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, so you don't sound quite as scary as the BC Liberals would have people believe.
Yeah, I don't. I know that there's a lot of negative advertising in an attempt to scare people. I just don't think it works. The 90s is misrepresented it. At a certain period in the 90s, people decided they wanted to change, and that's what happened. If you look at Revelstoke, good things have happened in the past 12 years here. You look at the schools, you look at, we got the ambulance station, we've got the ski hill. Good things happened in the 90s. Which the government was very active on. We got the Community Forest Corporation going. We have the Columbia Basin Trust. So good things happen and bad things happen, but I think people will look at Adrian Dix and look at the team that we have. I think most will have confidence in that group going forward. It is clear that the BC Liberals have really since 2009 run out of ideas and out of gas, really, and there's nothing new being offered. So provincially, I think people have made up their mind for the most part. The campaign always matters, but I don't really see a story that a BC Liberal can tell that's really going to be compelling to the electorate. So looking forward to the campaign, and the negative parts are unfortunate, but all that we can control is how we approach the campaign. And I think you'll see with the kickoff and the campaign that we run here in Revelstoke, it'll be positive and excited about the future, and certainly I'm looking forward to things going forward. I think there's all sorts of opportunity for the community and to get things done in a way that's different than when you're in opposition, to be honest.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, it's going to be fun, actually. The closer we get to it, the more enjoyable it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but it'll be you, and especially I think Karen will be glad when it's all done.
Yeah, very much, just to get settled, just to know what's going on. And it'll be different to work on something. I mean, when I was on council, when I was first on council, I was sort of the opposition council person. And then I'd always hoped that we would move into where we got a chance to do things sooner. I'd hoped 2009 we would get a chance. But when I was mayor, to be able to figure out things and to do things, it's so much more enjoyable.